MINDEF is deeply appreciative of Singaporeans' support for our defence and security. We owe it to Singapore and Singaporeans to be good stewards of the resources entrusted to us, be it money, land, or time, issues which Dr. Lim Wee Kiat asked about. MINDEF takes a long-term view towards building our capabilities, which Defence Minister has spoken. Through steady defence expenditure and by stretching each defence dollar, we are able to build up a strong SAF to meet our defence needs. Likewise, we also plan long-term for SAF's land use. Over the years, while the size of the SAF units may have become smaller, their operational capabilities have become more sophisticated and they require more extensive training spaces. For example, a typical infantry unit, a battalion, used to require a 24 square kilometer training area for maneuver exercise. Today, with motorization and other advanced systems, the same unit can easily operate and dominate a 40 kilometer square area. To meet our training requirements, MINDEF uses a combination of simulation as well as local and overseas training. Our investment in simulation, like the marksmanship trainers, allow us to achieve much higher throughput at much lower costs. It also allows us to correct our soldiers' fundamentals before we deploy them out for more costly outfield exercises. Innovative concepts like the multi-mission range complex, where we combine 7 rifle ranges into 1, takes ideas from concepts like the multi-story golf driving ranges stacked on top of each other and bowling centers equipped with individual computer diagnostics to aid the bowlers. All these make good use of the finite land space we have. For local training, MINDEF has over the years consolidated our training plots to use the spaces we have more effectively. There will be 2 main training areas, the live firing and maneuvering areas in the west and the offshore training area in Pulau Tekong. We have also synergized the usage of Army and Air Force training areas where possible. For institutional land use, we have continued to intensify the use of our camps and equipping centers to the extent we can, subject to operational, security, and safety requirements. When it comes to time, we know how precious time is to our servicemen. Where possible, we continually challenge ourselves to make it more convenient for our NS men to come back, to train, and to serve. For in-camp training, where possible, preparatory modules are given to NS men to better prepare them before they return for their in-camps. To allow NS men to stay connected when they are off duty, we have designated zones that are in non-sensitive areas where they can access the internet and stay in touch with their work commitments. Another good example is how we have evolved our mobilization system to allow our NS men to be mobilized much more efficiently while increasing their confidence and operational readiness many times. Mr. Deputy Chair, if I may have your permission to share with this House some slides on the changes to our mobilization system. Our more experienced NS men might remember that mobilization exercises used to be a fairly tedious process. In the past, our NS men would have to report for mobilization at various schools and camps, after which they would have to go and collect equipment from various locations before returning back to the mobilization for equipping. All this takes time. Actual equipping and force preparation only begins after this. It is a sequential process, one after another. Today, our NS men reports to our mobilization and equipping centers, or the MECs as we call them. The equipment that they need are already in the centers. The ammunition that they need will be pushed to them, likewise for other supplies. And all these ammunitions and other supplies are pushed to them in pre-packed modules whereby they do not need to go around to collect from different stations. It is unlike the previous method where we have the proverbial Chinese medicine shop, where people have to go to different stations to collect their different type of munitions and equipment. In the new system, you go to one place, you get the entire package that is configured for your respective units. This saves much time. The time saved can now be used for our NS men to undergo currency training that includes shooting the SAR-21 rifle, chemical defense, first aid, and other trainings that may be required specific to that unit. All these are done concurrently, which allows our NS men to not only be ready in a much shorter time, but also to have a much higher level of proficiency within the time allocated to them. Having said that, we will not rest on our laurels and will continue to seek further improvement. At this point of time, I'd like to share with Dr. Lim and Ms. Irene Ng some issues on the safety. Indeed, like what Ms. Irene Ng said, safety is of utmost concern to the SAF. Good safety practices needs to come from a few good practices. First, we must have good systems to make sure that our procedures and our operating methods, tactics are safe. More important than good systems, we need good people and good commanders who not only know how to work the system, but at the same time, they must have an eye for danger and an eye to be able to react when circumstances change. This is the fundamental building blocks of the SAF system: good systems and good people. Dr. Lim asked if we can do away with the grenade training. Let me assure Dr. Lim that this is actually one of the defining moments for all the recruits training, and we would like to train our recruits and our soldiers as they would operate in war. But before they do any live training for the grenade, they actually go through various sessions, starting with dummy grenades, progressing to something that is almost an exact replica of the actual grenade before they go on to embark on throwing the live grenade. So there are proper procedures in place. But having said that, we still need commanders with a keen sense of danger to know his man and his machine to ensure that our recruits and all our soldiers are safe. But having said that, I must reiterate that the military has inherent risk in everything it does. And it is incumbent upon all men and commanders to make sure that they stay alert and not be complacent just because there are training rules and safety regulations in place. Training rules and safety regulations cannot be a crutch to the sense of vigilance required in all our soldiers. I would also like to respond to Ms. Lina Cham's comment about compensation. Let me reassure Ms. Lina Cham that a compensation is not on a case-by-case basis. MINDEF has a proper system to look at compensation. In fact, the MINDEF Compensation Board is chaired by a senior legal officer from the AGC. So it is not just an internal MINDEF process. And if there's any concerns with this, there's also an appeal process. So it is not a case-by-case basis, but there is a proper system to ensure that compensation is done fairly. Next, if I may move on to the SAF medical system. The well-being of our servicemen is also an important priority for MINDEF. Let me update the House on how we are improving our medical care for our servicemen, which Dr. Lim, Ms. Irene Ng, and Ms. Lina Chiam has also asked about. We had reviewed our medical system in 2012. The review was co-led by Brigadier General Benedict Lim, Commandant of the Safety Military Training Institute, and Associate Professor Eileen Xiao, Divisional Chairman of the Ambulatory and Diagnostic Medicine at Tan Tock Seng Hospital. The review concluded that our medical system, which covers medical classification and screening, is fundamentally sound. Nevertheless, we will continue to improve and look for partnerships and initiatives to provide better care for our servicemen. For example, the SAF has been collaborating with the National Heart Centre Singapore to leverage on their advanced cardiac diagnostic capabilities to provide timely and quality cardiac screening for our soldiers. The SAF will also be collaborating with Jurong Health Services to provide specialized emergency medical services as well as training in this field. This will enhance medical support for our soldiers training in the western part of Singapore. It will also allow the SAF to benchmark our standard of emergency care. The SAF is currently exploring having experienced family physicians serve as in-house physicians in selected SAF medical centers and also to mentor our more junior doctors. The SAF will continue to harness the medical expertise and experience at the national level to ensure that our servicemen can have peace of mind when they train hard in service of our nation. Mr. Deputy Chair, Ms. Sylvia Lim asked about the Transparency International D+ grading for Singapore in its Government Defence Anti-Corruption Index 2013. Transparency International's assessment of corruption risk is weighted heavily towards the availability of public information in its defined risk areas of political, finance, personnel, operations, and procurement risk. For example, we would have scored higher if we released information about how much we spend on sensitive operations and classified research and development projects. But Singapore does not publicize such details of our defense and security expenditures, and it will compromise our security. To reduce the risk of corruption, MINDEF has instead put in place several layers of internal and external checks. Internally, officers that are in positions to approve projects are subject to security vetting regularly. The checks conducted as part of the vetting process will include credit bureau checks and checks on the assets held by the officers and their family members to identify any indications of unexplained wealth. In addition, the officers are regularly rotated to reduce the risk of them being cultivated by suppliers. MINDEF also conducts regular reviews of our financial and procurement procedures, and MINDEF's Internal Audit Department, or IAD, also performs regular audit checks. As part of our processes, we utilize data analytics to spot outliers and investigate each and every such incident. IAD's audit reports and the follow-up actions are reviewed by the MINDEF Audit Committee, chaired by the Permanent Secretary for Defence Development, which meets every 2 months. On an annual basis, a comprehensive report that grades how MINDEF and the SAF agencies perform is also submitted by the IAD to the Minister for Defence. Externally, MINDEF is audited by the Auditor General, who submits an annual report to the President and Parliament for scrutiny. That annual report is publicly available. Over the years, the Auditor General has identified areas in MINDEF's procurement and payment systems for improvements which MINDEF has rectified. MINDEF, like the rest of government, has a zero tolerance towards corruption. Our defence procurement process is widely recognized to be of the highest standards. Suppliers know that MINDEF has high expectations and that we drive a hard bargain when it comes to pricing. We have also been described as a reference customer. That means that when Singapore buys our platforms, it sets a benchmark for cost effectiveness for that platform. We have studied the TI report in detail and will decide where more information can be released, so long as it does not compromise our security goals. We are confident that our current system and processes to guard against corruption remain robust. Nevertheless, we will regularly review our processes to ensure that we remain corruption-free, because we owe this to Singapore and Singaporeans to be good stewards of the resources entrusted to us. Let me now hand over to Dr. Maliki, who will speak on our training efforts and total defense.